This week we're talking about the album Dark Night of the Soul by Sparklehorse and DangerMouse, and the British TV show Garth Marenghi's Darkplace.
Hey everybody, welcome to the New to You show. This week we're continuing our theme of cult and fringe, so things that are a little bit out there. We've kind of discussed a little bit about what we think cult or fringe might be.
In the last show.
And the TV show Fringe was not part of that.
Right.
That's right.
The X-Files, though, maybe.
What about the band The Cult?
I don't know.
What about the spin-off show of the X-Files about the conspiracy theory guys?
Probably more cult than...
What was that called?
Millennium or something?
No. It's like the three dudes, whatever their names are. I don't know. Yes.
But
something
there was
that.
a spin-off show called Millennium, wasn't there?
Really?
Or something like that?
I thought the spin-off show was about the three nerd guys.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Sorry.
Anyway,
Look it up.
Sidetrack.
You don't have to write and tell us. We would have looked
So,
it up.
So this week, Keith couldn't be with us, but he did give us a pick that we watched through, which was Garth Marenghi's Darkplace. So we'll get into that a little bit later in the show. And I have a pick this week as well, which is an album.
But John,
what
was new to you this week?
Oh, I forget what I was going to say was new to me. Oh, yes. I've been watching Project Runway this week.
That's not new to you.
No, it's not new watching it, but the season is new, and that's something.
And isn't Tim Gunn one of the judges or something
Gunn
this time?
Has a veto now or something.
So that's new.
But I like that show. I think that it's smart. In terms of reality shows, it's, the cream of the crap. So
it's no strip search, but,
someday I will watch Strip Search and we'll talk about it.
Perhaps someone will pick it someday.
Yeah.
And Jules, you'll have to do it.
Yeah. Jules, what was new to you?
New to me this week is I got to try Google Glass for the first time, which you might say is a cult/fringe product at this time. And it's...
Among rich techie guys.
Yeah. And didn't work great for me because I wear glasses already, and turns out the current hardware does not play well with glasses, so I'd have to put on my contacts to really enjoy it. But it's an interesting experiment, an interesting device, but it's still, I think, got a long ways to go before it's relevant. But, I think that's why it's not being released as a mainstream product yet.
Yeah.
I think they're developing it pretty quickly, though. I mean,
for sure. But
from the versions that people were playing with not but a year ago, tech is going to make leaps and bounds, and they have the full force of Google behind this thing. So
I think what's interesting about it, it's maybe smart because it's such a new concept, but it's basically it's a very beta product, and I guess that's a very Google thing to do. I mean, I was just thinking about what if Apple had released the iPhone when it only had 2 apps and a lot of the features were still half-baked. You know what I mean? Because the iPhone was like the last kind of equivalent where it was like totally new kind of interface, totally new paradigm. And I think Glass is even like way more of a new paradigm because you have to do everything. You're just looking at a kind of a small screen. You have to do everything pretty much like without a whole lot of input device.
Right. Well, I guess my argument there would be that you had the iPods come out, which were almost like...
But they were totally different.
But I guess what I'm saying is you have these gradation where it goes like iPod, because you get into like a touch, like if you're playing with like twiddling this thing around and sort of touching a small device and holding it,
but
I know it makes a leap.
Between the iPod and the iPhone was an enormous leap.
It was an enormous leap, but I guess what I'm saying is the interface of having something on your head, like just getting used to the physical aspect of that's a brand new concept for everyone versus having something in your hand like a flip phone or a cell phone. I mean, that it's a known quantity.
It's a brand new concept for people with 20/20 vision, people under the age of 40 who have
people who are going to live for a long time.
But I think
their eyes are perfect.
But I think because it has a lot of things against it, right? Especially like on a social level and all that. That's why. But like that, I feel like it has to be a really compelling product, and it has to really like, you have to put it on and be like, wow, I can't live without this. And I think right now, like the people who put it on and say, wow, I can't live without this are a very small crowd, and it has a long way to go before. I think it has that potential, but it has a long way to go. And I just think it, it just shows that, different approaches that different companies can take, that they're just like, well, this thing's, like we still have a lot to figure out, but here, check it out, and help us kind of figure it out. Whereas, Apple would say like, we figured it out. This is it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it would go a lot farther if they either made it some kind of attachment to glasses or made it glasses, because everybody in their life has put on glasses, and that's a acceptable kind of thing to wear. This thing just still looks silly. Like you said, you can't really integrate it with glasses. It's like you're being punished for being a double nerd.
Yeah, I feel like that's the thing. I feel like that's totally possible, and like I feel like that's it's not far-fetched that they'll be able to do that. I feel like that's going to happen very quickly. But that's where I feel like maybe it's a mistake to release it before you get to that point, because I feel like it's already, and especially because people don't really have their hands on it, but it's people are talking about it a lot. I feel like it already has a negative image without really being a real product yet. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I would have waited a little bit longer until I had something really compelling. To make that, because that first impression I think is really important.
Which may be like a segue, maybe it's almost a parallel device where you have something that is accessible only to people who have the cash to burn on it to some degree, is a sort of a tech toy, but is big and sticks out because it's different. It looks different. It moves differently.
It looks kind of dorky.
And it's almost like, hey, if Segway had said to, like, right off the bat, said, we're going to use these for police officers and security purposes, like it's like a more mobile golf cart, and boom, that's our contract. Maybe that sort of like graduating it into the public eye and people being used to it. It's like, oh, this is a mode of transportation. This is something that people will use to get around.
Yeah, I feel like the Segway could have been or could still be popular if it was just cheap. That's kind of the problem behind it. It's expensive.
Right.
But anyways, I feel like we got a little sidetracked
there. So Mary, what was new to you?
New to me this week was Anita Sarkeesian came out with a new feminist frequency tropes versus women in video games video. Is that what they're called? Yeah.
Yeah. Part 3.
Yes, part 3. Yes. So I watched it and I really enjoy those videos. I know from my Twitter feed, a lot of people don't, because she says critical things about games we love. But I just would beg anybody who bristles at that to just watch the first 30 seconds of the video again, where she says it is possible and good to like these games and also be conscious of these issues in them.
Right. I mean, that's all she's doing is raising consciousness, saying, hey, here's something to think about while you're doing this, and just be aware, so that even though you may enjoy it and the trope is doing what it wants to do, you're just aware that if you drop awareness of it, it can become insidious. It can become something that, just perpetuates and is tiresome and doesn't advance our culture. I had not realized just how pervasive that trope was. I knew it was in a bunch of games, but like I just was really like, wow, it's really in like so many games, and well-known games and all
I guess this particular trope is damsel in distress. I don't think I said that.
Yes.
So it's the part 3 of damsel in distress, and she's doing a whole series on tropes about women in video games, and this is just part 3 of damsels in distress.
And it's clear, like from watching it, I mean, I think part of what makes her arguments so compelling and worth listening to, even if you disagree, is just that she really puts a lot of work into the videos, and they're very well researched and thought out, and it's clear that she knows a lot about and loves video games. I mean, you're not going to get so worked up about them and know so much about them if you're not into it. So I think she's doing it out of love.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would it was also new to me, and I highly recommend it.
Cool.
So without further ado, let's get into some cult. Hey everybody, so my pick this week is Dark Night of the Soul, an album that was released in 2010. After some back and forth, there was a few moments where it actually looked like it wasn't going to be released, and there was a moment where they did release it with an art book, and because of legal issues, the CD that was included was a blank CDR. And there's a disclaimer that said, for legal reasons, enclosed CDR contains no music, use it as you will. So it was kind of saying, download the album where it's probably posted and burn it onto the CD. So that's sort of an initial little tidbit about this album, but the more cult aspect and who this character is, who made this album, is what I kind of want to get into a little bit. So you have this guy Mark Linkous, who is a singer-songwriter who's kind of coming up in success in the 90s. Like 95 is when his first album hits really big, and he goes on tour with Radiohead in Europe in 96 after this album hits, and he takes a bunch of antidepressants, Valium, alcohol, heroin in a hotel room in London, falls unconscious with his legs pinned beneath him for like 14 hours, and his heart stops because of potassium buildup, and he gets surgery where he has to he loses use of both of his legs and is wheelchair bound for 6 months, and then from there on in just requires dialysis for kidney failure. So this guy just when his career is starting to build up, just is knocked down by sort of all the rock star doom devices that you can find. And I think it's
really short episode of Behind the Music.
Yeah, exactly. And so he goes on. He sort of becomes this musician's musician, where he doesn't really gain much notoriety and fame, and he keeps putting out his albums after this point, but he's more listened to by the bigger artists, the Radioheads and the Flaming Lips and all these guys.
He's influencing them.
Right. And that's sort of similar to Half Japanese was to Nirvana. You have this guy who, he's into William Blake, he's into these sort of precious, surreal things, and just does this work that inspires other people to push their music and do their work. So I guess my definition of him as a cult artist is that he's only listened to by primarily this sort of his fans are these a subsection of listenership. They're musicians primarily who listen to him, and then his music is not super approachable, but there's some pop appeal in it a little bit. But I think that he was pretty interesting and pretty influential, but in the background enough, and at a certain point he is recognized. They start putting this album together with this guy DangerMouse, who is a music producer. He put together the Gorillaz' second album. His first kind of big hit was it was called the Grey Album. It took Jay-Z's Black and the White Album by the Beatles and kind of merged it into this one sort of mesh track.
Yeah, it was one of the first big mashup albums, and it was also pretty controversial because I think he released it. It was just like he did it for the enjoyment of it.
Right.
It was just released online, and he obviously didn't have the rights to either. So I think he was already running into rights issues from from that get-go, and I'm sure that was part of the issue.
Right.
Maybe sampling was some of the issues. Yeah.
So the DangerMouse and Sparklehorse, that's what Mark Linkous kind of gets to be known. That's he is the head of this band. That's
what band?
Of Sparklehorse. And so he is Sparklehorse, but he's also the front man for the band that is Sparklehorse. And so him and DangerMouse pair up and they put this album together, and you get all these other great artists: Flaming Lips, Iggy Pop, Suzanne Vega, just all these different people who want to work with him, Vic Chestnut, and they're all working, and David Lynch, who sings on like 3 of the tracks, who write and work on these albums with him, and kind of show the cross influence that he has on them as they're creating this album. And then because of legal issues, it sort of ends up in limbo. You don't know what's going to happen. And then just as they're wrapping up the album, he dies. He kills himself.
He's like, what will really give this album a push if I kill myself?
Right. So you have just sort of this tragic figure who had about a 15-year run and put out some interesting work, and that was that. So, Mary, what did you think of Dark Night of the Soul, or this guy's work?
I enjoyed it. I'm not very musically inclined, so I don't really know what to say about it. I can say, because this was on the Cult Fringe show, I was expecting it to be weird or something I wouldn't like, but I didn't. It sounded kind of mainstream to me, except maybe a couple of the songs, but I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I think it is mainstream, but it's almost prescient in that, where it's playing with textures and tapestries. Like if you listen to his first album, which is critically named like Viva Dixie Submarine Transmission Plot, all one word. It's playing with textures and playing with these ideas that you don't see for 10 years. Like he's playing with sound and doing things that, that there's a reason why the Flaming Lips and these guys were listening to this guy and watching him. He was playing with stuff that maybe it's because they were having to put together more mainstream, more produced stuff. They didn't have the level of freedom or playfulness that he could put into it. But, he had his strict influences and was kind of doing his thing. Yeah. And then his lyrics are really strange and surreal, and the references are very like literary and sometimes hard to. He's not doing ballads kind of thing. They aren't like easy linear bite-sized stories. It's a lot of sort of heady stuff, which again, looking at William Blake as one of his inspirations, who even does a song, like puts some of those poems to song. It's you mean
William Blake, the romantic poet?
Yeah. Okay. So there's moments like that where he's
I mean, so his work was pretty new to me. I actually, in fact, the particular album we're talking about is super new to me. In fact, I'm hearing it for the first time now in the background. But I did delve into his Sparklehorse catalog and listen to that quite a bit. And it sounded new but also very familiar at the same time, because I think it reminded me of a lot of bands, a lot of his contemporaries, both a little bit before and after him. But at the same time, he definitely had a distinctive quality. And I would say maybe it's like a lot of the elements of a lot of his peers, but I think more subtle in a way, like more kind of subdued. Like there's no one element of his songs that comes out and hits you over the head, or that you're like, oh, that's his sound, this is it. Right. Like it's just like a little bit of this, a little bit like, and he's also a little bit hard to qualify for that reason. There's some, kind of like, I mean, it's definitely like indie rock, like a little bit grungy, like there's some noise stuff. There's, like you said, like his lyrics are a big part of the songs and kind of poetic. And yeah, so he's kind of hard to pin down, and I think maybe that's why he like had some momentum but like didn't quite hit the mark, is he just doesn't ever have that like single that is like hooks you in. But I can definitely see that they're the kind of records that if you really get into them, you would really sink their teeth in.
And I think that's one of those, he has a small rabid following. Yeah. And there are people like he has aficionados, like appreciators, and that's something that I think could define a cult. Cult artist.
Yeah, and I'm surprised I went this long without hearing about it. I mean, it could be that I had and forgotten kind of thing, but it was the first time I really paid attention. So thanks for introducing him.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to seek out more.
Cool. So Dark Night of the Soul, you can listen to it on Rdio. His other albums, a lot of his library is available on Rdio. If you want to track down the special edition that has the book and with David Lynch's photographs that sort of illustrate the concept of the album, you can try to find that. It was pretty limited run. But there are a lot of interesting different things he was doing and playing with musically, and I just recommend listening to him. He even did a track on the Nightmare Revisited, which was a rock release of, it was basically covers of the entire Nightmare Before Christmas soundtrack. And so like Korn is doing a song, but he's Something's Wrong with Jack, and it's really weird. But
Dark Night of the Soul is also available on Spotify, but is only attributed to DangerMouse, which is kind of interesting.
Weird.
So, but yeah, definitely check out Dark Night of the Soul, and also check out his first album. It's there are different elements in there. It's less heavily produced, but you can kind of see that he was ahead of his time with that.
Definitely worth it.
I'm Garth Marenghi, horror writer, although I prefer the term dreamweaver.
Thanks for electric. I was hysterical.
My life is yours.
Garth is the most significant artist that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with Lulu and 4 other people, so we're talking creme de la creme.
Hey guys, so the other pick this week was brought to us by Keith Vincent. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it to the record, but we will have him on in the future. And I may, if I can get him in a booth for a bit, I will try to get his thoughts on this as well. Maybe I'll have him listen to what we say and mock us. But so his pick was BBC 2004 TV series, 6 episodes, pretty short and sweet.
It's a British
show
season.
Called Garth Marenghi's Darkplace. And it was created by Matthew Holness, and Richard Ayoade. They actually did a stage performance of this called Garth Marenghi's Netherhead. It's like a horror comedy stage show. And they did it with the female character in it as well. That actress, Liz Berry? I don't know. I should know more on that. But it then got made into a short series. Richard Ayoade you'd know from the IT Crowd. Yeah. Matt Berry was in...
also the IT Crowd.
Yeah, he was in the IT Crowd, and he's one of the actors on the show. He's also in the Snuff Box, which is a show he made with a dude from... Alice Lowe is the actress that they went to school with and did Garth Marenghi's Netherhead with. Matt Berry, though, going back to him, he worked with the guys from the Mighty Boosh, who are also, it's almost kind of like in the States here, we'll have our like comedy sort of little like bubbles, and they all sort of kind of travel together and seem to help each other out as they move up through their careers and do their things. So you kind of end up seeing the same characters and the same people playing out in these different shows and different venues. And this is sort of that, these guys are that part of this British comedy scene where you have the IT Crowd guys who are also, working with Graham Lyman, who cameos in Garth Marenghi's Darkplace. Steve Merchant cameos in the show. Noel Fielding and Julian Barrett, Julian Barrett was definitely an IT Crowd. I don't know if Noel was. He might have been. But those two were also in the Mighty Boosh with Matt Berry. And Matt Berry met Fulch, who was a UCB guy. So there's all these sort of Rich Fulcher, and started Snuff Box, their own little short series. So you have this sort of not incestuous, but this tight-knit group of comedians who are kind of working together and putting out different shows. And this collaboration is a comedy show. It's like a bad Stephen King author, like, R.L. Stine, like cornball horror author who's made a TV show in the 80s based on his, concepts of horror. And the characters who make it, he's this egotistical, like self-aggrandizing little man, and his buddy who helps him make the film, the producer, is this weird character unto himself, played by Richard Ayoade. And so, and Matthew Holness plays Garth Marenghi as well. So you have them basically telling the viewers and showing the viewers this From the Vaults 1980s TV show that's lovingly reproduced as cheesy and as true as possible. They try to get in every trope and every like film grain and bad editing and bad acting that they can to, and overemphasize a lot of this stuff to make it like
For
this
comedic
is
effect, yeah.
This is as it's not campy in some degree. It's real and somewhat over real, like super real, so that you get the jokes a little bit more, but it's recreated.
Wait, they're saying that they recreated it?
What they're saying is that
okay.
this guy made something that was too controversial for television.
Right.
That was
and
like
then they
too
show
crazy.
that's what they show, right?
But
Yeah.
but the subtext is probably it was too crappy to actually be aired, and so
Right.
it was just shelved without ever showing.
Right.
And so he It's like he regained the rights to it, and then they release it on their own, intercut with sort of, you know, behind the scenes commentary from the cast and crew.
Usually saying, this is why this is so awesome.
Right. Yeah, again, self-aggrandizing.
Yeah. So you have, too, this show was shown late night on BBC, I think, and they used like an old-fashioned Channel 4 logo and stuff. But it didn't do well. They just kind of like, after a little bit, pulled it. But then there was this upsurge of support, and they quickly got it back on the air. It's shown here in the States on like Adult Swim. And, you know, it's along the lines of the Look Around You show, which is a similar sort of 1970s recreation of a certain kind of educational show, which is really funny.
Yeah, because again, it like is perfectly recreated. You could almost believe that it was, but all of the information is totally incorrect.
Yeah.
and sometimes to a ridiculous level, and it's just brilliant.
So this Garth Marenghi short series, they eventually released it on DVD. I mean, if you can find a DVD of it, it's got commentary from the director and producer. So it's the same guys in character doing commentary to the show. And then there's great excerpts, you know, just kind of them riffing and just cuts of them. So you kind of get a little more backstory on the show, but it's also just like you see more of these great comedic actors exploring the characters that they have. The timing is great. And it's really just fun and funny. There's some moments that are just like laugh out loud. And in terms of people who work in TV and are watching for mistakes, to see them like recreate the mistakes and overdo them is really exciting. And
yeah, there's
silly.
a lot of jump cuts and the Dean
Lerner.
Yeah, that character.
Richard Ayoade.
Yeah, played by him. He's the producer who is asked to play an actor because, you know, the guy only casts, you know, non-actors or whatever, and
Right, to make it real.
Right. And
but really because they can't afford real actors.
Yeah, and in the first episode, I think he said, like, as he's introing it, he's like, well, I'm not an actor, and he says, it's okay, I don't want an act, I want the truth. And so he says, so here I am, Dean Lerner, playing giving you the truth, and then, you know, it's just always this very like stilted performance with jump cuts because he made mistakes. And
yeah, clearly he's a terrible actor. It's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I'd already watched a few of the episodes. I hadn't seen them all, and it was so great to get to watch them again. And I really think this series is like genius. It's like, I think you definitely appreciate it more if, because I mean, having grown up on 80s television and seen some of the shows that they're clearly emulating, I think definitely adds an extra level of enjoyment and appreciation because they really got the flavor right. They nailed it.
Yep.
But it's just super smart, and it just works. The jokes work on so many different levels. And, you know, within the series itself, there's so many different levels because there's, you know, like you have the author, you know, reading from one of his novels at the beginning of every episode dramatically, and then introducing the shows, and then you have the show itself, which is, you know, again, loving recreation of kind of a B sci-fi horror show, and then you have the other layer of the supposed creators of the show commenting on it, and then at the same time you have all the other layers of, you know, just the fact that this whole thing is you know, fake. You know,
like
it's
a
just
farce, right?
Is a farce, and so all those interactions right there just create so much humor, and then on top of that, it's kind of like the like ridiculous plots that they came up with, that this guy supposedly wrote, are also like in and of themselves like kind of entertaining, and there's plenty of great stuff there. The other thing is the cast is great. Like they're again, you know, we've seen these guys in a bunch of British shows, but Matt Berry always stands out to me. He just has an amazing like radio voice. Like he just talks like this, you know, and he's like the manly man. But and you know, again, they're all playing kind of these manly tough guys, but they're all like kind of like weird looking, you know, and like not your stereotypical guy. But he's especially awesome because his voice is so great. It always he has this theatricality about him because of that. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like there's so many little pieces of the show. They also always close with like the main character on the roof of the hospital. So it's the whole place is kind of like a hospital show. And the hospital is called Darkplace Hospital, and it's in a dark place. And in this and so they're doctors who are trying to save lives, and they always like go over the top with like, you know, helping some small sick child and that kind of stuff.
And they'll have this moment like where the same like, hey, here are these EEGs, get these to radiology as quick as you can. Lives are in danger. And so just like medical mumbo jumbo that really like doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and kind of so you've got the medical melodrama. And at the same time, you have this kind of like all these sci-fi horror themes going on.
But layered into it is the ego of the author.
Yes,
and
there's brilliant stuff too, where he's always like, so there's tons of narration, which reads like one of his novels would, which, you know, makes everything super melodramatic. And he always makes a point to use really big words, but then he dumps them down for you so you can understand what he's saying, you know? So again, all these little details. And, you know, last episode we were talking about John Waters putting these kind of like taking the time to put all these loving details. And there's just like this show is jam-packed with them. There's all these little asides, all these little visual details that just, again, make it so dense that it's just something is going to crack you up.
So, Mary, what did you think of?
Yeah, it's hilarious. I love that he always says, in the 90s, I made the show in the 90s, and it's so clearly like from their haircuts and everything, it's more like early 80s, late 70s or something, you know, and it's
I think it's like, yeah, you
they've
know what?
got mullets and like her hair.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not from the 90s.
When was the like the $1 Million Man?
That's like the 70s.
Yeah, because it kind of it feels like that time period to me.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on the show you're watching.
But I think that's intentional.
I think
that's intentional.
Yeah.
It's just like another joke. It's just one of those shows where it's like everything, every line, every detail is a joke.
Yeah, and you really feel. I mean, that there might be a creator in here, but you really feel like it's a group of people just having a ball. Like just you can tell, like it's just so jammed with ideas. A lot of people must have contributed in the writing room.
Yeah, and I like too. It's appropriate that this is in the cult show because it's kind of like a meta cult pick because it's the cult show, and then his original show from the 90s never aired, but if it had, you know, maybe there's some underground copies of it out there, right. And it would also have a cult following, certainly.
Yeah, if this was a real show, it would be like The Room, where people would just like love it and watch it over and over because it's so bad that it's good. Yeah. But also, it's directed by Richard Ayoade as well, and I think the direction is, I mean, apart from just, you know, a lot of it is just copying,
like pastiche kind of stuff.
Yeah, but there's also these other elements in there that I think just are really smart and make it really great. And another really fun meta thing is that so they're recreating this low budget show that didn't have the means, but at the same time, you know that they were making a low budget show and didn't really have the means. And I feel like a low budget comedy show, like, you know, probably, I feel like they probably did a lot with very little, because it still looks kind of somewhat, even though it's all cheesy, like there's just a lot of stuff going on. It seems kind of expensive in a way.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of
for big,
like cheap props.
Yeah.
Silly props.
Like but that. Still, like getting all those props, having makeup, like,
yeah.
You know,
I mean, there's a lot to do to even do a period piece.
Three actors or four. I guess there's four.
There's extras and stuff, but yeah, I mean, to do a period piece with hair and stuff is work and money. But I mean, they don't do many exteriors. They don't.
That's true, and again, they can use all the cheap tricks
Right.
and it adds to the humor, and so that's another great thing about it.
I think it's hilarious, but I think you guys are pumping up a little bit how realistic the recreation is. I think it's really intentionally over the top.
No, it is over the top, but I guess what I'm saying is it's like lovingly true to over, like it's over the top, but not like camp. Like it's not.
I think it's campy.
But I think it's campy within the right boundaries. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that's
Like,
bad, but I
it
just
makes
don't
you-
think
it's close
like-
enough to the thing it's emulating that like I know exactly what it is.
Right.
You know,
and
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
the
sure.
flaws and over the top stuff I think are there too because they're there in the old stuff and you probably didn't notice them, so they're just making a point to have bad continuity, to have like awkward acting and bad blocking because it was there. And so but they're just they're turning it up a little bit. So
Yeah,
it's not
a
like
lot.
they're
turning
it's
it up
not
a
like
lot.
they're going
They are
somewhere
turning it
off.
But
That's good, though. It's
but
fine.
every now
It's
and then
good.
there's moments that like I could where I just like I'm just really reminded of some of those early shows.
There's a great episode, just to kind of go into one of them, where the horror is the Scotch mist. It's this mist of the souls of Scottish warriors. And the whole reason it's like coming around and killing people, which is like, and the way it kills them is it makes their faces all plaid or something, is that like the whole reason is because this Garth Marenghi guy, Douglas MD that he plays, went to Scotland and like hated it and it was like horrible. And so the whole show is sort of this commentary on how this guy hates Scotland and Scottish people. It's like really like anti-Scottish racist kind of thing. And that's the whole premise. Then, he's like coming to terms with the fact that they're warriors and he's a warrior. And even though their place is a horror show, it's not the worst thing in the world. But so then in the commentary, he's trying to defend his stance on Scottish people. Like, I'm not racist against them. But then he'll, it's the, I'm not racist, but, statement. And so it's another like hilarious sort of, which if we were British, maybe it'd be even more funny.
Yeah. And if it was just, if they had turned it down just a little bit and it was, like maybe 20%, maybe more. Like if it was a little bit less over the top and less campy, I think it would border into like Ricky Gervais' Office territory, where because he's kind of a despicable, self-involved guy, and
right.
But so there's kind of that aspect that's fun to watch. Is this guy who thinks he's so brilliant, but is actually
no
just
self-awareness.
Yeah, but is like so terrible. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. But hey, Keith, great pick.
Thanks,
Yes.
Keith.
Yeah. So Garth Marenghi's Darkplace. You can find it. Maybe they probably have released it in the U.S. on DVD.
So it's not on Netflix?
I don't believe it is. No, it's on. It might be available through iTunes. Maybe.
I know it showed on Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah, it
and
showed on Adult Swim. You might be able to find it on demand through one of those channels, but
maybe like if you BBC. Like if you get cable, a lot of these
BBC America or something might
they'll
have it.
apps on the iPad, and
Yeah.
I don't know if
But it's
on there.
and any of these guys worked. The Mighty Boosh I would check out. Great comedy with Julian Barrett and Noel Fielding. Any Matt Berry, like the Snuff Box is weird, really weird. It's actually almost like a bad sitcom, like that they're actually doing with skits kind of peppered in. Very strange, but like definitely worth watching. They actually, and I haven't seen this, but they made a Man-to-Man with Dean Lerner show in 2006, which was almost like a talk show with Dean Lerner, the Richard Ayoade's character, interviewing people.
Oh, awesome.
So, that's something I'm going to have to dig up and watch. But so Garth Marenghi's Darkplace from 2004, you guys should check it out. I would say, heck, buy it on DVD. Heck. But yeah.
It has high replay value.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can definitely find a lot of clips on YouTube, which, you can watch enough there to know whether or not you want to see more.
Yeah.
You'll either find it hilarious or think it's stupid.
All right. So Garth Marenghi's Darkplace. It may not be new, but hopefully it was new to you.
Why won't she be mine? I wish I was more attractive like Douglas. Still, one can only dream.
I'm a one-track lover, down a two-way lane, driving fast down the highway, must have been insane, 'cause the temperature's too high, traveling way too fast, and I knew our loving was too hot to last.
She's smooth, like ice, cold to the touch, and it isn't very nice when you left alone. You let you treat you bad, leaves you hang on the phone. Take off, shove your loving on the wheels, put the pedal to the floor, 'cause you're heading for the hills. Got to get away, can't take it no more. Man, you don't need this, leave her at the door. The door. Sanch, open the door. Open the door, Sanch.
With such a question, there are right and there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of it.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the second episode of our cult show. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho. With me this week was
Mary Varn. You can find me on Twitter at Mary Varn, and I have a webcomic at npccomic.com.
And Jules, Julien Koetsch. You can find me at Beautiful Jules, at Beautiful Jules on Twitter. And that's good enough.
Yeah. So if you guys want to learn more about what we talked about on the show today or what we talked about last week, check out the website, newtoyoushow.com. It's based off of Tumblr. We've got some pictures from the shows. I link to the episodes or places where you can find and watch these things.
You do a very good job.
Thanks, buddy. So if you want to leave comments, we have comments on the New to You Show. If you want to tweet us, which is a great way to get a hold of us, you can tweet us at New to You Show. I hope you enjoyed.
And if you did enjoy, consider leaving us an iTunes review.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be really nice. So once again, this week we talked about Sparklehorse and DangerMouse's collaboration album, which also featured David Lynch, Dark Night of the Soul, from 2010. And we also talked about Garth Marenghi's Darkplace, a BBC Channel 4 show, which was released in 2004 and is now on, now we've learned right now.
Oh, no, we didn't. Never mind. We're
was
getting the no
showed in the
sign.
States and probably is available on DVD somewhere. All right. It may not be new, but hopefully it was new to you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
For the loss of a washed up John Doe, one hit wonder, a buzz, just a local around town. No distinction between the rest, pretty much your average sound. Defeated by destiny, and still don't know why I'm remaining so later down the line. I can attempt to say I tried to make a difference, all washed up and left with nothing more than some memories submerged in my failures and giving in to underachievements, letting myself go. Now another that's been cheated, but nobody will ever know since I quit before I can see if